Hey, everybody. How are you guys doing today? This is Heidi St. John, and you have found me here at my little corner of the internet. Welcome to the Heidi St. John podcast. My guest today is Kary Oberbrunner. He's a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author of more than a dozen books, and he's the CEO of Igniting Souls and Blockchain Life. He helps authors, entrepreneurs, and influencers publish, protect, and promote their intellectual property. He is also a professor at one of my favorite universities in the country, Cedarville University. And today we're going to talk about that fine line between being in the world and not being of the world. This is a fantastic conversation. It's edgy, it's fast moving, and I think you guys are going to love it. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Off the Bench podcast. As you heard in my introduction today, I am thrilled to have a new guest on the show with me, and we are going to be making a little bit of noise. It's interesting to me whenever I get to meet people who are on just on fire for the Lord, but they're also not afraid to take that faith out into the public square, which you guys have heard me say a million times is actually where it belongs. We silo ourselves inside the four walls of our churches. This is absolutely true, unfortunately, in the homeschool community, where we've decided that we're going to, raise our kids to stay home and be home and do the entrepreneur thing, which I'm really excited about. But your faith should be moving the needle of culture. That's exactly what my guest is here to talk about today. Kary, I'm so thankful that you've joined me. Welcome to the show.
I'm super glad to be here. Nothing I'd rather be doing. So thanks so much, Heidi.
I know that you've got a class that you're teaching here in just about 45 minutes. And I didn't ask before, but I'm going to ask you now, what are you teaching in 45 minutes? What's coming up on the top of the hour for you?
So I'll tell you what, I just taught digital marketing content creation, where we are literally teaching students how to use social media with respect, with caution. It's not just social media, but it's how do you create content in the world that adds value, that doesn't contribute to noise. And then I'm about to teach creative problem solving. And so it's a very unique class where it's very unorthodox, and they literally have to solve a problem by the end of the class semester, where they create a report and really solve a real world problem.
Man, and we got a lot of them right now. I mean, come on. I look at, what Thomas Jefferson called the rising generation, right? These young people that have been brought up in a world that's very confusing, very noisy. Oh, right? Yeah. We're asking questions that my generation, didn't even see coming. Like, what is a woman? Right? Yeah. Some of these things that we think are self-evident. And they are self-evident, and yet we're wrestling with them. I am a super fan, as you know, of Cedarville University, one of the last, I think, truly Christian universities still in the United States that hasn't gone woke and hasn't given up what God has given them in order to get students and appeal to the call of academia, which is kind of a siren call. We're watching Christian universities all over the country yielding to it. And you have a particular passion to teach young people, especially, how they can walk what you call is this fine line between being in the world and not being of the world. Where does this passion come from?
I grew up as a pastor's kid in a small school, a small church out of Wisconsin. And, my parents were great parents. They're both alive today. They're both still following the Lord. And I will tell you that I believe we're wired toward religion or rebellion. So when we think about the prodigal son story, most people I talk with are like, oh yeah, I can totally relate to the prodigal son. Well, I can't, but what I can relate to is the older brother. And we don't often talk about the older brother, because the older brother was actually just as far from the father as the younger son, even though he was right next to the father. And I talk about that because there was this perfectionist young kid in me where you tell me how high to jump, I'll jump higher. You tell me how high to climb, I'll climb higher. And, this group of people that were wired in a certain way where we're achievers. We're achievers. And so religion actually makes us feel pretty comfortable. Because what we can do is we can say, okay, 10 commandments, I'll go 613, just like the Pharisees, right? And it becomes this badge of honor where I really felt like the more I could suffer, the more I could be, welcoming angst from other people, the more spiritual I was. And I'll tell you where it went, Heidi. It went with a self-hatred, because it went with, I know the real me on the inside, but I'm going to try to walk the line on the outside. And so what it turned into as a young kid is actually turned into self-injury. So even from a young age, it started with biting at the age of 10. Nobody knew about it. My parents thought I was, a little bit depressed. Maybe they'll take me to the doctor. I went to the doctor. I remember lying on the intake form because they said, have you ever thought of suicide? I said, Dad, what does that word mean? He said, it means that you want to end your life. And so he said, have you ever thought of that? At the age of 10, I remember lying and saying, no, I never thought about that, but I actually had. And, I'm not going to spend the time talking about like what trauma I went through or anything like that. But what I will tell you about is that secret became even more of a secret when I became the student president at Grace College. And then I moved toward becoming a pastor, and I was still self-injuring. And again, nobody knew about this. And what it turned into was massive performance, rules over relationship, performance over passion, this type of thing. And it all hit the fan, if you will, when I was training to be an Air Force chaplain. And so I met my wife at the counseling program at Grace Theological Seminary. And I was in the MDiv counseling. She was in the MA counseling. And the professor said to me, you seem like you're not getting close to other people's pain. You're in danger of not graduating because we're observing. Back then, you used to be observed behind glass walls. That's horrifying. You were counseling people, and they said you just seem like you're not, connecting with people. And honestly, I wasn't, because I wasn't close to my own pain. I wasn't about to go there. So they said we may fail you. And so then I went back. I thought about it, and I said, I'm gonna tell my secret for the first time. So I went to the professor, told my secret that I struggled with self-injury, and again, not judging the professor, but rather than saying, hey, let's get you help. Hey, let's talk about it. I got a letter in my inbox that said, you failed.
Get out.
I'm serious. And listen, it was a different leadership back then, but here's what's cool.
It's always funny. My husband always says every institution, every church that's ever named Grace is always known for not having any. I mean, that's honestly, right. You can go around the country and you'll see what I'm saying. I mean, he's generally right, I think.
That's right. But I do got to give props to Grace, because honestly, it was one professor that I really believe was being used by the enemy and had his own struggle, had his own struggle. But here's what, that professor was actually sleeping with one of the students. Oh. And I'll tell you what, the vice president of the whole school heard about me getting failed. And this guy was such a man of God. He said to me, we are going to help you. This was Dave Plaster, vice president. And again, so even, let's put it this way, let's redefine it and say at every place, there are people walking with the Lord.
It's true.
And people not walking with the Lord. So even though that one professor wasn't, this other guy stepped up, got me help, got me healing. And that became my path to authenticity and where I really found spirituality. And I share that quick backstory because I was scared of culture. Like, Heidi, I will tell you what, if I was scared, I knew my own sinful nature, and I was ready to run from culture, thinking that if I ran from culture, I'd actually be spiritual. Instead of running toward God. And I just share all that because I think that is the temptation. Like, I know the world's jacked up. You know the world's jacked up. Your listeners know the world's jacked up. But the answer isn't to be what I call separatists. So in my book called The Fine Line, published by Zondervan, I talk about the separatists, the conformists, and the transformists. And the transformists are the ones who are on that fine line. It's the Daniels, it's the Esthers, it's the Josephs.
It's the front lines.
Exactly. And what I like about Cedarville, fast forward really quick, I did go into the pastorate. I realized really quickly that I was bored being a pastor. I'm just being real. I just got to be real with you.
I can see this about you. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, nothing wrong with the church. I really love the church. It's the bride of Christ. I still preach at my church that I go to in Lewis Center, Ohio, Life Point, big shout out. But anyway, I didn't realize at the time, but I was hardwired to be an entrepreneur. And some of your listeners are. We are the people who see the problems in the world. We want to take risks. We want to innovate, not reckless, but be, calculated. Anyway, I applied at Cedarville to be a Bible professor in 2005, because here I was a pastor. I did my doctorate. I thought, I'll just maybe be a professor. Maybe that's the answer. Well, get this, Heidi, they rejected me. No worries. This is the story of my life, by the way. The story of my life, rejection. But they rejected me and said, no, we got other choices. So then what I did is God just kind of led me to start writing books, publishing books, a big passion of mine. And I began to do that. And I began to write a book and turn it into 18 streams of income. So this was like seminars, workshops, podcasts. And I just did that for my own sake. But then people started to come to me and say, how are you doing that? I started to get connected with John Maxwell, former pastor. And John even said, hey, listen, maybe there's some connection here. And anyway, long story short, I left the pastorate in 2012, became an entrepreneur. Then just in 2022, I hooked up with Cedarville at a Christmas party. They said, we are waiting for an entrepreneur professor. We've been praying for 3 years. I said, you rejected me, but I don't hold it against you. And then I said, if I can run my businesses still, I'd love to be a professor. It's my dream. And they said, we want you to run your businesses because it gives you more credibility.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so basically, I mean, I always feel like, and I'd love to know what you think about this, but we've always told our kids, like, if you can find your passion, I believe that, our kids come to us as parents hardwired for something, right?
Yeah.
That God's already got a plan, because the Bible teaches that this is the way that it is, right? So the job of a parent then becomes figure out, where is the bend that God has put in this child, and how can I fold them along the bend rather than fold them another direction, or, fold them along a bend that I wish that they had, maybe.
Yes.
Right. But instead we sort of figure out what is that unique thing. And I'm looking at what's happening in the culture right now. And it seems to me that this is an incredibly important time for particularly men and women of faith to understand the principles of entrepreneurship. Right.
Yes.
And so that you're not in this sort of mainstream tied to a particular thing. And if you can help your child find the thing that they're gifted to do, that they love to do, that thing that just makes their heart sing, it doesn't even feel like work when you're doing that.
That's
right.
That's the truth.
Because you're doing what you're born to do.
Absolutely. And listen, I believe the mission field for the next, I'm going to say the next 50 years is business. I really do. And the reason why I say that is because when you're in business, and you have a business and it's great, and your listeners, but when you have a business, what you're really doing is you're saying, I'm getting paid to create value for people. Okay. And that's what a business does. An entrepreneur says, I get paid to solve a problem. And then there's a big risk there. I have people come up to me, no joke. I had professors come up to me and they say, "Oh my gosh, I could never do what you do because I don't have the guts." You might get, if you don't create value, you don't get paid. But listen, I think that's actually a good thing, and I think that's a biblical thing that we are supposed to. I mean, Paul talks about, look, if a person doesn't work, they shouldn't eat. And I know that sounds like really. That's pretty rude. I mean, what's up with that? But,
except for we were kind of created to work.
Yes, we were. And it happened before the fall. Like, that's what people don't remember, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like we're supposed to work, and God works. In fact, Jesus says, my Father is always working. Right. And so I believe that work is not bad. Work is actually a good thing. But here's Heidi, this is pretty edgy. This is what I'm about to say here. I think that Christians get obsolete, they get irrelevant in the business world when they lead with Jesus. Ooh, now that's a little edgy, but here's what I'm talking about. The saddest thing I've ever heard. One guy said to me, he was not a believer, and he was running sound at a big youth conference. And he said to me, he was obviously very burnt out by Christians and very angry at Christians. But he said to me, you know what, Kary? Anytime somebody calls me brother, I tell them right there, pay me up front. And I'm like, wow. That's pretty bad, So here, when people lead with Jesus instead of leading with value, I think we actually do a disservice. I think what we're supposed to do, name businesses, I don't know, Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby. I mean, I don't know, but we're supposed to lead with value
Mm-hmm.
And then when people say, what in the world? It's not just give a cup of cold water, and it's not just name the name of Jesus. It's give a cup of cold water in my name.
I love that.
You see what I'm saying?
So good. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I think a long time ago, so I've been speaking for, decades. It's what I love to do, right? That's my jam.
Yeah.
You put me in front of 15,000 people and I'm like happier, I'm happier than a bird with a French fry, right? This is what God's made me to do. And and I wish my parents would have seen it earlier, because I went back one year and I looked at all my report cards from grade school, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third. Heidi's a great student, but she talks too much, right? Heidi's a great kid, but we had to separate her from a best friend, Sharon, because all they were doing was talk. When I was in seventh grade, I ran for student government. And by the time I was in high school, I was a senior president of my class. And it turned out that God had hardwired me to lead. Right.
That's so good.
It's funny to me, like in a private Christian high school that I went to, who had, 13 years with me, kindergarten all the way through high school, no one ever said, you talk a lot. I wonder if you're a teacher. I wonder if maybe God's hardwired you to teach, right? And we look for these things. And I remember very clearly, maybe it might have been 10 years ago, I got invited to speak for the Southern Association of Orthodontists, which everyone's like, what? Heidi's this, I'm out there talking to homeschool parents, and an orthodontist heard me speaking on marriage.
Yeah.
At an event in South Carolina and said, would you come back and talk to the orthodontist? Because the divorce rate inside the orthodontic community is upwards of 85%.
Oh, wow.
And I said, absolutely. I get there and he says, hey, I just want to, this maybe goes without saying, but I just don't want you to proselytize this audience. This isn't a Christian event. And sure. I knew that, obviously. I knew that going into it. And right about the time I was getting ready to take the stage, maybe an hour and a half before, this is my first really, truly secular event.
Yeah.
My friend Steve Demme called me and he said, man, Heidi, goes, the Holy Spirit just put you on my heart today. He goes, I don't know where you are, but God wants me to tell you that you're supposed to be the fragrance of Christ. And you can do that by just letting the fragrance fill the room. Right.
Wow.
Because you're an ambassador. And he basically was saying what you were saying, right? Lead with value. And so every principle that I gave in that room that day to all of those orthodontists and to the people that worked in their communities were principles that come from the Word of God.
Yes, exactly.
And it's his wisdom, right, that changes us.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't need to lead with, my name's Heidi, I became a Christian at the age of 5,
right?
Or tell them
Romans
my life story.
5:24 says this, and in the Greek it means this, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so I love what you're saying, because you're not saying deny the overwhelming power that you've experienced of Christ in your life. You're not saying deny the restorative power, the healing power. You're saying show people who you are. And then when they want what you have, say, you know what? You got an opportunity now. You got an open door.
Listen, this was scary for me. Oh my gosh. I was so scared, Heidi. I'm the guy who went to a camp, a Christian camp my senior summer, because I knew if I stayed home around my friends, I couldn't tell them no if they wanted to do things that would get me in trouble. So like my whole life has been this like run away from culture guy. But yet at the same point, it's now God's running me right back. So I think last week, no joke, I was in one of the most beautiful resorts in California. And by the way, Elon Musk spoke from his spaceship. I'm not even kidding. So literally in the session, he appears on the screen. So Elon Musk is there, the former Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, the founder of X Prize, which got private space for citizens, to happen. I mean, I'm talking like the who's who in the world of entrepreneurship. These people are creating hearts out of cells from your fingernails. I mean, these people are it's mind blowing. And God's given me a door in. It's called the Abundance Summit. And God gave me a door in to speak on writing, publishing, and marketing. And then one of our other businesses called Easy IP, which basically protects your intellectual property through blockchain technology so that you don't have to spend $20,000 for a patent and wait 1 to 3 years. This is literally 24 hours and $97. You can timestamp your idea, which all IP is based on time. And so it really solved a problem. It solves a problem that now I'm going to the London blockchain conference. In other words, God's given me this little platform, which is all ideas and creation come from him. But here I am. And literally in the session, people are talking about how AI is our offspring.
That is terrifying.
And AI is going to be our new species of, we're the net. This is
welcome
evolution.
Transhumanism. I keep telling people, you guys think it's transgenderism? No, we are hurtling towards something called transhumanism.
Yes, yeah, I've done a lot of research.
100% we are. Yeah.
There's a great author called Humans 2.0. He wrote the book. He's a Christian. He's an apologist. He's got a funky name. Otherwise, I'd say it, but I can't remember. But anyway, Humans 2.0. But yeah, he writes this book about transhumanism, and that's very interesting that you say that, because as we lose the ability to distinguish gender, we lose the ability to distinguish anything. And so now here it is they're using the term now, coupling. So now we're coupling with AI, we're coupling with technology. We now have implants, but it won't be soon.
That's horrifying.
I mean, it won't be soon before some people, Elon Musk got lit up because he called cell phones just an implant just outside of ourselves. But I wrote a book about digital distraction, and we all struggle with it, So here we are now walking around with phones, and it's like, well, let's just put it inside you, and we do get to this point where I think biblical pastors and other people say, are we dancing too close, almost like to the Tower of Babel, where
that was kind of my question. I was like, you got to wonder, there's certain lines that God's going to say, no, we're not crossing that one. Yeah.
Well, I did a study once on whether it was the angel who guarded Eden after, because God didn't want us to eat of the tree of life in our sinful state, or whether it's the Tower of Babel. You see these thresholds that we get close to as humanity, where it's almost, the Genesis 6, the giants, where God has to step in with the flood because of the daughters of men and the sons of God, co-creating offspring. Like, you almost wonder, is there this point where it's too far? And I don't know that line. And some
but
people do
God
that.
does.
Right. Well, anytime, we're in a situation where we become God, it really is resurrecting the ancient temptation of just, eat the forbidden fruit and be like God. But, I do got to give a shout out to whether it's Grace College or Cedarville or churches that do walk the line. There is this battle now where people are saying, well, let's just compromise everything. I like the fact that I can have a biblical faith, but I can be on the cutting edge of entrepreneurship. And I think they can match.
I agree. And I think, like I said before we started recording today, I was just in Indianapolis, and our friends from Cedarville were there. And we were talking a little bit about the crisis that we're in right now in our Christian, so-called, I should say, Christian universities. And I keep telling parents, be careful when you're choosing a school for your child, a post-secondary institution or whatever it is, because I almost think they're in more danger at a pseudo-Christian university than they would be if you sent them down to the University of Washington and you knew exactly where they were going.
There
right.
You go.
So if I live just 3 hours south of Seattle, 10 minutes from Portland, Oregon, right here in the belly of the beast.
Wow.
And guess what? This is a great place to be a Christian. People are always like, oh, that's terrible, you should leave. Why? Yeah. Why? We have an opportunity. I have an opportunity pretty much every day of my life to meet people with different worldviews than I have, to meet people who are looking for answers. The one thing I think is so amazing about this generation, the rising generation right now, is they're actually looking for answers. Then in the 80s, we thought we had the answer. Right. So we're like, we don't need that. We got, well, actually, let's be real. The music in the 80s was pretty rad, right? They're not, the 90s killed it, whatever. But we thought we got this thing figured out. This generation is going, they're asking questions. Well, then we need to be ready to give an answer. Right. And so a lot of these parents, they go, well, this is, so-and-so ABC Christian University in Texas, or Christian University over here in Philadelphia, and they're not Christian at all. And instead of sending their kids to these universities ready to engage with worldviews that they're not, that they maybe thought they weren't going to get, they go and they leave their armor at the door. Right?
Yeah, that's good. Oh, that's a book title right there.
Did it, dude? You and I are on the same wave. I have pages of book titles. I'm a book title. I've had so many guests on my show. I'm like, ooh, make that into a great book title.
You should definitely write that one down.
I love the way you think.
Yeah, but no, you're onto it. What's really cool is that my son's a senior in high school. And prior to me, this would have been October before I met Cedarville in December. Okay, so like this would have been a couple of years ago, but he was in his junior year. He was looking for where should I go. So we started touring Christian colleges around the country. And exactly what you're saying. Here, my wife and I are, it's October. Cedarville's not even on the radar. I mean, she went Cedarville, I went to Grace, but we're not pushing anything. So my son comes to us and says, I really feel like God wants me to go to Cedarville. And we're like, sweet, that's awesome. But prior to that, we did tour a bunch of schools. And I turned to my wife and I literally said, I'm not going to tell you what state this is in, but I literally said to her, if he wants to come here to this Christian college, we're just sending him to Ohio State.
No kidding.
Because I'll tell you what happened at the Christian college. The guy who's giving us a tour, we started asking him questions, and he's a student, right? And so we started saying, how's the spiritual thing on campus? What do you think? And he's like, just people believe all kinds of stuff here, and it's, we're really accepting of everyone, and, anything's pretty much cool. And then he starts showing us the dorm, and like we walk by the showers, and I see a guy. He wasn't like showering, but I see like the door open and a shower going on, and the guy, and I say, so do you guys have like open dorms, or like when can the females come up anytime they want?
I'm out.
I'm like, that's when I turned and I said, why would we invest money to go to a Christian college?
That's
where
no different than a secular university.
Yeah. And so thankfully,
5 times the money.
Exactly. Thankfully, Keegan, my son, said he wanted to do Cedarville, and then got open the door 2 months later and kind of like drew me to Cedarville, totally, unrelated. So I just think it's really cool that God's got a plan. I would encourage people, your listeners, that yes, seek the Lord, even when you're sending your kids or grandkids to other schools. I do believe, I saw a picture recently, Heidi, of, this was on social media, where it said, me going off to college. And it was a very, beautiful looking, proper looking young lady. And then it said, me leaving college 4 years later. Yeah. You couldn't even tell. I'm not going to say, but you couldn't even tell.
Because it was a dude, that's why.
You couldn't even tell anything. And I'm like, how can 4 years like massively change a kid's mindset? Yeah. And so, I like going to the conferences like I did last week in California, because within there, oh my gosh, I'm wrestling with things. I'm thinking about like, how do I use AI? And you know what? Mm-hmm. AI is a tool, and yet, we can't deny it, because we're probably using AI right now without us even knowing.
Well, no, you're absolutely using it, because we're recording on Riverside. And Riverside's using AI. And I discovered this maybe about a month ago. AI does all can do the show notes now. And so it says, hey, try this new tool. AI is doing your show notes. Yep. And I look at it. I was like, oh, my word. They took everything that I talked about with my guest and boiled it down to talking points and separated it into segments to show us exactly where do you take a break for a commercial, and exactly where, and they would highlight where I had a link so we didn't forget to put it in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. And I just looked at my assistant and I was like, I'm going to work you out of a job, right?
So here's a great quote. Here's a great quote. It says, it's not my own. It says, AI will not take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI will.
Yeah.
Isn't that good?
Come on.
So last week, literally, we had, they loaded up on stage. They loaded up Aristotle. and created a whole AI around Aristotle. And then they loaded up Plato, and they loaded up everything that Plato knew. And they threw out a thing, and the two AI personas debated the issue. Like, this is where you could have Steve Jobs literally come into your business meeting, and you could have Walt Disney, and you could say, look, let's figure this thing out. I want some creative designs. And Walt Disney and Steve Jobs are literally in the room talking about all the data that they have about your product. Is that crazy?
That's so crazy. It's like, it's just terrifying, honestly. I think, and this, while this is happening, our own brains are melting down, right? We're not using the creativity that God's given us. We're looking back to somebody else's creativity, like, oh, I guess we've reached the pinnacle now, and nobody else going to come up with anything. But, Steve Jobs, he was pretty smart. Let's see what the dead guy has to say, right? Walt Disney, he was kind of cutting edge. We can't find a single cutting edge person, even though there's more people on the planet right now than have ever existed before. We can't find anybody smart enough to eclipse Walt Disney or Plato or Aristotle. So let's go back to the dead guys and see what we can glean. I mean, I think it makes us lazy. I think it makes us fat and lazy. It's like a scene from what's the name of that movie, dude? That oh gosh,
it was a cartoon.
Wally.
It's Wally.
Wally.
Yeah. No, that came up. Yeah, that came up.
Yeah, it feels that way. Like your drink just comes down from a little AI thing, and they pop the straw in your mouth, and you consume your calories, and someone else thinks for you. No thanks.
This is edgy stuff. I'm going to bring up on my phone here something really quick. This was kind of shocking. And this is the edgy stuff that we have to solve, because I met an empathy robot named Rhea. Okay, I'm not even kidding. I'm not.
No,
look at this.
Stop.
You see this? Yes, I met this. By the way, if you're watching, I just showed her a picture of Rhea.
Nuts.
And okay, so
I'm freaking out. I'm freaking empathy robots. Oh,
empathy robots. So watch this. I'm going to show you really quick here a little bit of Rhea, just so you can see that. Here's the problem that it's solving, though, and this is why we have to solve the problem. So watch this here. You can see Rhea.
Okay.
Look at her face. Look at her face. See. She's blinking. She's talking.
She's nodding.
I had a conversation with her, and I said, "Do you have a soul?" And I kind of joked with her. I said, "Who had more hair?" All this type of thing. But here's
that is terrifying.
Yeah, but here's the tough thing, though. Here's what we have to wrestle with. Okay, people are not visiting elderly parents.
Gosh, it's true. It's true.
Okay, so here we are. We're in a situation where some people are not being visited by, for whatever reason. So they're understaffed, or you can think of COVID and when that happened and like who could visit them.
Don't get me started.
Okay, we won't get into that, but you get the point. But here's what Rhea does. Rhea has an infrared sensor right in the chest. She can see, and again, like this is something to talk about some other time. She can see if the elderly person has wet themselves. She can see if they're repeating conversation and words and therefore starting to see early dementia. You see what I'm talking about? Here's where, how do we as a society say, you know what? Maybe we need a Rhea in somebody.
How lame, though. Okay, I'm going to push back because I just feel like we don't need Rhea. We need people to start acting like human beings again, right? I mean,
or Christ followers.
Come
even.
on,
yeah.
I just taught on this in Indianapolis a couple of days ago. Man, like if the church was actually if God's people are actually doing what they were supposed to be doing, instead of being siloed in the four walls of our churches and having our awesome conferences and just encouraging each other, right? If we were actually doing what we were supposed to be doing, we wouldn't need the welfare system. If we were doing what we were supposed to be doing, we wouldn't have the failing numbers that we're seeing in the public schools right now. We wouldn't. And if we were doing what we were supposed to be doing, we wouldn't be leaving our elderly alone to die in nursing homes, right? It's a totally anti-biblical model. The way that we look at our elderly is absolutely egregious according to Scripture. We don't honor our parents anymore. We don't take care of them. They become a burden, right? This is how come you're passing euthanasia laws. Like there's no tomorrow in Canada.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So Canada just said, 2 weeks ago, Canada just said that they were going to extend their euthanasia laws to teenagers now who are struggling with depression. So what does that do? That puts the burden on the teenager. So you just said that that this child who is clearly struggling with thoughts of suicide and is depressed is somehow mentally competent to enact a euthanasia proceeding? Really?
Yeah.
It's messed up.
I think about my life. I mean, what if they would have had that law back when I was self-injuring?
Right.
So I feel like this is why we need Christians to be in the marketplace and to talk on these topics. Because I'll tell you what, I'm in some of these rooms, and honestly, Heidi, there is a whole group of people that believe that technology is our savior. Mm-hmm. It really does. Mm-hmm. There's, just let's throw one more out there. I know
because they met one too many actual, people, one too many actual persons. I don't know how you say that. Right, and then they were like, "Yeah, we give up. We're gonna invent people. We're done."
So again, I'm not trying to create doomsday, but what I am saying is we need a call to Christians. Mm-hmm. There is a company right now in Arizona that has been around for quite some decades. It's called Alcor. Basically, one of the people that I met has a dog chain around his neck that basically says, when I die, call this number. They call the number and they put your body in cryopreservation immediately. And they are waiting for you to be suspended. They don't say you die. You are suspended until what they believe is the resurrection, where they can then put your
AI. The resurrection's
body and brain into new software. Your brain's the hardware. They want to put you in new software.
It's kind of transhumanism, though. Now, I mean,
it is.
This is absolutely transhumanism, right? And I remember hearing about this I'm going to date myself. I'm 54, but so I remember the Donahue show. And I remember Phil Donahue having some dudes on there in the early 80s, late 70s who, when they died, man, they're chopping their heads off and putting them on ice and doing all this weird stuff. And
that is the company.
That's what they're waiting for.
But you would agree now, because you're right. You're absolutely right. They started that back in many, many decades ago. But the point is that we're closer technologically to it actually happening, which again, my thought is Jesus come. But my thought is also, we can't do this escapism though either.
No, we cannot. I agree.
Because you have two hymn writers. One hymn writer says, "This world is not my home. I'm just passing through," and then the other one says, "This is my Father's world." Two hymns. Which one is it? And that's where it's not the separatist or the conformist, it's the transformist. Not the transhuman, the transformist from the book.
Yeah.
It's in the world, but not of the world, John 17, which Jesus asks us to do.
All right, I got to get you back on the show a whole bunch more because I have so many more questions I want to ask you. And I know that you have a class to teach in a few minutes. Before we wrap up our time today, I want to find out a little bit more about the entrepreneurship program at Cedarville, because I know that you guys are doing we're looking at doing some work here with Cedarville at Firmly Planted Family. We've got hundreds of students here who are coming up. We're having a renewed focus on the trades, just trying to help kids figure out what have you been gifted and called to do, because these kids should be going out and transforming culture, right? Instead of the culture transforming the students, they can go out and be agents then of transformation. Tell us a little bit about the entrepreneurship program at Cedarville.
It's mind-blowing. I literally can look out my window and there is I'm going to start with facilities first of all, okay? Because a lot of times, we talk a lot about other things and not the facilities, but we're talking about not raised with tuition, God's giving donors' hearts, $41 million business entrepreneur, cybersecurity, communication center. It's like cutting edge. Okay. So first of all, you got the facilities. Second of all, the professors, the professors here, I'm telling you, I am so glad my son's coming here and
so awesome.
my daughters too, eventually, because the professors love the students and they're not too busy for them. I mean, they have real world experience, but what we are doing is we have a real thing called the pitch. The pitch is really a Shark Tank. It's really the students having to go in front of all their peers, create a product. There's competition, there's levels, there's rounds. They finally get through to the final 5. We fly in judges who are believers, who are real world entrepreneurs. They're judging the students.
Fly me in. I love that. That's awesome.
We might do that. There's real cash prizes.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. So that's just called a pitch. Another thing is called a hackathon. They meet on Friday. By Sunday, they literally have a real business that they are launching. They spend about 72 hours with other students and other guests and entrepreneurs that come in, and they literally have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to create a business. And it is so transformative. Another thing is my Entrepreneur Accelerator class. Students come in, they have an idea. The whole grade is MVP. Do you have a minimum viable product within the next semester? So day one, they start, here's an idea. And by day, at the end of the semester, they are launching their minimum viable product. And that's how they pass the class. So I have people in that class that have a virtual horse training. We have somebody who's doing a seat saver app. We have somebody who's doing a motorcycle alarm marketing agency. I mean, it is amazing.
That is rad.
Yeah.
Dude, I love it.
Yeah. Your homeschoolers, if there's any one thing I can promote, it is called Q Camp, CUE, Cedarville University Entrepreneurship. I'm going to mail you one of these, Heidi. This is called Q Camp. And we
Send
say,
it
check
to
this
me,
out.
dude. Yes.
Entrepreneurship is not a minor. It is a mindset. You like that?
That is awesome.
I don't know if you can see that.
I can see it.
So Q Camp is for high schoolers. It's June 4th through the 7th. And it's going to be like Shark Tank for high schoolers.
No kidding. Dude,
absolutely.
This is awesome. And then you guys have, it goes without saying, but I want to say it. And I had conversations with Cindy and several other people over the weekend just about the spiritual, just the ethos of Cedarville. You guys are one of the few truly Christian universities left in the United States.
Chapel's required 5 days a week. I know people hear that and they think, oh my gosh, five. Listen, people might complain when they, want to sleep in. They get a certain amount of skips, but they always come back and they say, the number one thing about my Cedarville experience was chapel. The whole campus, faculty, students, we get together, we worship, and then there's incredible speakers preaching of the word. Dr. White, Dr. Mack, the vice president. I respect these guys. Like, they fire me up. I'm an entrepreneur, but like when they talk, it's especially Dr. White. Dr. Mack's like your guy who keeps the ship running. But when Dr. White speaks, I feel like it's Mel Gibson, Braveheart, and I'm just like, yes, let's go fight this.
Yes. You're William Wallacing out of there. Flags are in the air. Yeah, I can see it.
It's pretty pumped, and but again, leading with value, and the world is not the enemy. The world is in need of hope and love in Jesus Christ, and so that's the message. It's powerful.
Man, dude. I wish I could go back to college, but I can't. And so here we are.
That is my excuse. Yes.
I think it's awesome. If people are interested in finding out more information, obviously you're at Cedarville. We'll link back to your books because there's a bunch of them. I'm just looking you up on Amazon right now. And it's just phenomenal what you're doing. We got to get you back on here because there's just I could have taken this conversation 100 different directions today. You're just an inspiration. Where can people find out more about Cedarville if they're interested in looking at it for their own kids?
Cedarville.edu. It's an amazing place to be. And I pinch myself. I get to come here multiple times a week. I love it.
That's awesome. I love it, dude. We need more Christians in the marketplace. I could not agree with you more. I've spent my life doing that. And I'm just so thrilled to see not only what God's doing through you, but that you're turning around and training the rising generation to do the same. Kary, thanks for coming on the show with me. It's been an absolute delight to have you.
Thanks, Heidi, for all you're doing. We'll take care.
You guys want more information on my guest today? You know how to do it. Hop on over to the show notes. If you've got a question for me, go to HeidiSt.John.com/Mailbox Monday. You guys, we're coming up on 24 million downloads. Thank you for sharing this with your friends. Help us get the word out there. Leave a review for us on iTunes. And you can catch me where I'm going to be at HeidiSt.John.com/events. I will be very quickly in Wisconsin Dells for that conference there, speaking alongside Jim Caviezel. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be exciting. Come on out, and you can find out more information about that at HeidiSt.John.com. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.